The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
The top of the morning to you. Welcome to Autism Live. We want to wish everybody a very happy St. Patrick's Day. So thrilled to be here with you this morning. We are coming to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. You know, for those of you who don't know, we shoot on a green screen. So you will see there's lots of green behind me, greenery, and you might think, oh, you know, Shannon just never wears green. And actually, it's a lie. I have a lot of green on today, but the camera's taking it out of my scarf. I've got a green shirt on, which is covered up, and I've got some green earrings, which are going to read as gray for you. Looks like holes in my ears for today. But be very aware of the fact that we have tons of green around us. We are celebrating the day with all of you. All right, we're going to be with you live for the next 2 hours talking about autism from a 360-degree perspective. Lots of things that we're going to be talking about today. But I want you to know right from the jump here that this entire show is meant to be interactive. We love to participate with you. And sometimes we have gremlins in the studio, so we're having a lot of technical issues going on this morning as we get ready to move. We only have this week and next week left in this studio, and then we're moving to higher ground, literally. We're just moving about 4 miles west of here, but to a high-rise building. We're going to be in the Warner Center in Woodland Hills in Tower 1, and we're going to be very high up. But so things are starting to get packed, and we're having lots of technical issues. I think whatever spirits have been floating in this studio already are aware of it, and they want to let us know that they're going to miss us. So in any case, we will have the ability to, I believe that right now you have the ability to be writing in our live feature. I can't see it in this moment in time, but we're going to straighten that out in the next couple of minutes. But I want to tell you how you can use it, and want Kelby to remind you that there's lots of different ways that you can interact with us. And while he's showing you some of the different ways you can be watching the show, I'll remind you that our homepage is autism-live.com. When you go there, so many things to do, but please, please, please sign up for our free email list. You get the free newsletter with that, and you'll also get updates about who's going to be on the show. And sometimes we have surprises at the very last moment, so definitely want to check that out. Also on the live feature, on that live page, you have the live feature, which is that series of white boxes to the side of the computer screen. If you put your cursor in the box that says your question, you can type, hit enter, and it will show up here on my screen usually, and it will again in a few minutes. And in that way, you and I can be having a conversation in real time, but so much more important than that, you can have the ability to ask our experts questions and comment with them and have dialogue back and forth with them, which isn't that awesome. Keep in mind that there's absolutely no cost for that. It's totally, totally free, and you don't have to do anything extra except type and hit enter. You don't have to have a username. There's no password. You don't have to remember your mother's maiden name, none of that stuff, and there's no credit card involved. It's totally, totally free. You get to be completely anonymous if you choose to be. Sometimes people will write in and send us an email address or a phone number because they want something in particular, like they'd like a copy of a study that we've talked about here on the show or more information for somebody to get back to them about. That's all great. We won't share that information when you send that in to us. We keep that very, very private. So, and one of the reasons why we do that is because we want to make sure that you get to have the level of anonymity that you would like to have. I know that that's important. And I mention this all the time, that we have lots of guests that are on the show that are experts, but I'm not an expert at all. Don't be confused about that. I'm a parent. And so that's part of the reason why I know how important it is to you to disclose what you want to disclose when you want to disclose. My son was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2.5, and we've made the choice to be very out there and open and public with his diagnosis. And we continue to ask him if he's okay with that. And he's a particular kind of kid, so he is okay with that, which I really appreciate. There's more and more stuff that he says, Ma, I really don't want you talking about that, which I sort of get. Not sort of get, I totally get, and want to make sure that I'm being good about maintaining that for him. But in any case, everybody gets to make their own decision, right? But I like to remind you, I am not an expert. I'm passionate about this subject, passionate about learning about it because of my precious about-to-be teenager, my goodness. But I hope that I can help you in any way possible. If you need resources, if you just want to know that you're not alone, I always say, let's hold hands in this. None of us is alone. There are a whole bunch of people that you can't imagine who are working to be able to help to support you. Reach out, grasp hands, because si se puede, we can do this, right? All right, we like to start every morning with something we fondly refer to as the jargon of the day. This is when we take on one word, one phrase, one acronym, and we try to figure out what in the hey nani are these people talking about? And why are they talking about this? How is this useful to my day? I don't have time to waste on things that aren't going to help me in what I'm trying to do right now. But we find that when we understand these terms, boy, a lot of times they are really, really helpful. Okay, today's jargon term is task analysis. Now, this is one of these things that, we've all heard the word task. We use this in our everyday language, right? We've heard the word analysis. And we've used and heard that, put these two things together. We think we understand them, but really, why do I have to stop my day to hear about this? This is such a life-changing thing, turns out. When we're dealing with an individual on the autism spectrum and we want to teach them something that they're having a hard time with, this is a very big deal and can be life-changing. Okay, so let's take a look at our actual definition. A task analysis is the process of breaking down a complex skill or series of behaviors into smaller, teachable units. All right, that's not a bad definition. Makes a certain amount of sense. Let's move on to our working definition. Task analysis, a list of all of the individual steps a child or an individual has to take in order to complete a task or a sequence of behaviors. All right, let's stop and think about this, because I'm a former teacher. And I always used to think when kids would come into my classroom, I began to think of them as wonderful little lumps of Swiss cheese. They had certain things going on, but then there were holes. And sometimes in our kids, the holes are so visible you can see through them, right? And if you're asking somebody to do long division, but they never ever learn to do multiplication, what are the chances that you're going to be successful at teaching the long division? It's really going to be an exercise in frustration for absolutely everybody. And when you're doing long division and they don't know multiplication, it can become evident very quickly, if they don't know the multiplication, this isn't going to work, right? But what about all those other tasks in life that you just go, I just don't know why they don't get it? And it could be something as simple as brushing teeth. It could be something as complex as riding a bicycle. It could be as complex as figuring out how to participate with a group of friends outside on a playground, right? These are all skills that take a certain amount of steps to be able to do and do well. And the thing about it is if there's one little thing in the middle that is gumming up the works, it makes the whole thing shut down. And doing a task analysis on something is a way of stepping back and looking at it, listing all of those different steps, because then you can have a teaching moment and go in, like literally checking them off. If we're talking about brushing teeth and going, okay, what are the steps involved in brushing teeth? You're standing there at the counter, and different people do this in different ways, by the way. Some people grab the toothbrush and the toothpaste and take the cap off of the toothpaste first and then put it on. Some people wet their toothbrush first, right? Different things for different people. But if we've got a child who is not managing being able to brush the teeth by themselves, and we discover, all right, they can go to the sink, they can turn on the water, they can wet their toothbrush, they can take the cap off of the toothpaste, but it's the squeezing the toothpaste tube at the same time as they're putting it across the toothbrush, the squeeze and the push, that's the part that they don't have. And they can't get it, so they get frustrated because they can't move on to the next step. And then we get to the frustration to the point where they're having the tantrum. Stop and think about all the really good things that they already have. They already know how to actually do the brushing. They know how to clean the toothbrush. They know how to spit. They've got all that together, but they can't get to the good stuff because there's one step in there that's blowing the whole thing. It's so easy as a parent to just get into the frustration with them and go, they just can't brush their teeth. When in fact, if we were able to look at the task analysis, we would be able to figure what to teach. So often when we get overwhelmed with what a child is missing or what an individual is missing, that we're like, I don't know how to teach this to them. Maybe they're not teachable. That thought certainly occurred to me on a very, very dark day that I looked at my child and I went, I don't know what to do. Maybe he's unteachable. This doing a task analysis brings it back to a point where we can think like educators. We can think like teachers. We can get to a positive. It also helps you to realize, man, look, this is a 15-step process. It's not an easy thing. And when you check it off, wow, my child can do 11 of these 15 steps. Suddenly, it feels more doable. And when we take just one little slice out of the task and we say, what we need to do is work on that squeeze and that toothbrush, that's manageable. And if we take it outside of working on brushing teeth, put it someplace else and have a tube of something and have the child squeeze it and make it really rewarding, like maybe getting a tube of paint where they're not having to deal with all the other sensory things, but having the tube of paint and having them squeeze it on in their favorite color. Now we're giving them tons of opportunity. If you think about it, maybe if you're doing really good toothbrushing, you're getting 3 opportunities a day to squeeze. That may not be enough, but we get the child and we've got all these tubes of paint and we've got them squeezing, and it's really reinforcing because there's color and they get to do things with the color that comes out. Maybe we're going to get 100 squeezes in a 10-minute time period. Now the child's building up the muscle and understanding and getting the fluency of it. Then we can plug it back into the toothbrushing and suddenly we see, man, this child can brush their own teeth and they get the pride of that, right? It makes it possible. So the task analysis, that list of steps that we break a behavior down into, and once we do that, then we have a way to teach the Swiss cheese, right? Great jargon. Love, and this is so useful, totally can be life-changing. All right, use it in your everyday. Let's move on. We always have a question of the day for you. We want to know today, what issues prevent you from traveling? What are some things that, like, if you think to yourself, oh, if I could travel anywhere, if I could go anywhere, I would do X, Y, and Z. But is there anything that's stopping you? Is it the fear of your child having a meltdown? Is it maybe it's just the money to be able to do it? Is it that your child, I know people who will not travel because their child will not go to the bathroom any other toilet than the one at home. So what are the issues? Let's just list them. Let's just list them to see what they might be, because maybe some of them are surmountable. But what are the issues preventing you from traveling? We always have a topic of the week, and our topic this week, I'm really excited to be talking about this. We're talking about anxiety and autism. And clearly we've already touched a nerve because I posted on Facebook about this, and we've already had several people writing in about anxiety and I love that you guys are already so proactive that we had some people writing in about what they're doing to get around the anxiety, to get through it, to change it, to decrease the anxiety. And that's really what we're going to be talking about, is what can we manage with the anxiety and how can we make the anxiety more manageable. Some of the different things that we're going to be doing today on the show, we've got a great guest who's going to be joining us for the first time in just a couple of minutes. Cindy Vandenbosch is going to be with us, and she's from the Museum Access Consortium. You want to talk about a wonderful organization that's making it possible for individuals who are on the spectrum and have special needs to go and participate participate and enjoy an experience at museums. Really, really incredible. And it's centered mostly on the East Coast, mostly in New York City, but they're pretty much writing the manual for any museum to be able to participate. And Cindy's going to be talking with us about that in just a few minutes. We've got an update with some autism news coming up today. And also, Dr. Linda Copeland is going to be joining us in the second hour today. She's going to be answering your questions. So you're going to really want to tune in for that. For those of you who've never heard from Dr. Copeland before, she is both a developmental pediatrician and a board-certified behavior analyst. Say, what? I know, right? Because we're familiar with both of these things, but not in one package. Well, it's a wonderful thing that Dr. Copeland has that understanding of ABA and what it is to look at things from a behavioral standpoint, and she's a developmental pediatrician. So you get 2 for 1 with her. I always call her a unicorn because I'm pretty sure that we know that there's one other physician who is also a board certified behavior analyst in the world, but I don't think that they're a pediatrician. So she's a unicorn. So all of that plus more with you and talking about anxiety. So stick with us. We'll be right back after these messages.
Hi, I'm Ryan with Autism Research Group. We study ways to improve the lives of kids with autism. One of those ways is teaching safety skills, such as what to do if they get lost. We hit the streets to find out if anybody knows the correct answer on how to teach a kid what to do if they get lost.
You're teaching a child.
What to do if they get lost.
Yeah, you're trying to make them independent so they have the skills.
Gotcha. Okay.
Well, give them a compass. Code name's good idea. Centurion.
We always have this whistle.
Oh, I'd also tell the kid. I tell the kid, don't get scared. It's all. You're gonna be all right, man. This is just the world. This is planet Earth. You're at home here. As long as you're on planet Earth, you're at home.
As long as you're on planet Earth, you're home. This guy's a genius. With that flawless logic, he just solved our homeless problem. And as for the unique sounding whistle, although very cool, it'll probably only work if you're in close proximity. And a compass?
I have her call me.
Yeah, she don't have a phone. Parents are like, you're too young, you don't need a phone.
Establish some sort of like meeting place.
What if they can't find a meeting place? Because sometimes the kids get nervous when they get lost.
Yeah.
So like a backup plan,
Well,
plan B.
Yeah, I don't know. No, not really.
Let them go and find a new kid. Or something.
Yeah, I've got a different one. Yeah.
There's not much you can do. 'Cause
There is
I
stuff
like,
you can do.
Like,
That's right, there is stuff you can do. In 2012, myself, along with my colleagues, Dr. Jonathan Tarbox and Dr. Adele Nadowski, published a study in the Journal of Applied Behavior Analysis on teaching kids what to do when they get lost. The study demonstrated how 3 simple things, rules, role-playing, and praise, were effective in establishing these help-seeking behaviors. The benefit of this method is it doesn't require the child to have a cell phone or to have to locate a meeting place, which might be difficult if they're in a place like Disneyland. So once again, our method included rules, role-playing, and praise. Let's head back outside and learn about some of these rules.
They should yell out loud. Can't find my mom, help me.
maybe yell out and scream for help.
All right. Scream really loud.
Correct.
And if that doesn't work, then,
I don't know.
well, they could seek help from someone.
Find an adult.
Yeah, go to a vendor, and say I'm lost.
Find an adult, like a police officer or a fireman or an employee in the store, and tell them, and maybe they can help you contact your parent.
It really is that simple. You don't need to get your kid a cell phone. You don't need to establish a meeting place that they might not be able to find when they're lost and panicking. And you definitely don't need to give them a compass. All your kid has to do is 3 things. First, yell mom or dad real loud. 2, if that doesn't work, find an employee. And then 3rd, tell the employee they're lost. If they can't locate an employee, then tell them to find a mother with children, because that's probably the safest person to approach. I'm not saying that most men are predators, but most predators are men. That is a fact. I've read it in a fortune cookie. All right, so you've gone over the rules with your kid, and you've quizzed them, and they're able to tell you the correct responses so they understand the rules. But is that enough? How do you know they're gonna perform correctly in a real world setting? You need to get out there and find out if they can actually do it.
So you'd go over the rules and tell them, like, do this, do that, but how would you know if they actually knew what to do? If you wanted to shoot a basketball, and I just told you, oh, when you shoot a basketball, do this, this, and this.
never practice.
You never
It's not gonna
practice.
happen.
Yeah, so it don't matter how many times we go over the rules or how well you can repeat them back to me. It's not going to change until you get on the court and practice.
Maybe do like a, a little skit with them.
Like a role play.
Role play, yeah.
Your child, you're lost in the toy aisle.
Okay.
What do you do? I'm an attendant, walking around.
I'm lost. I don't know where my mom is.
And then once you practice, you just like praise them, give them feedback, like, good job, you did it.
Reinforcing it.
Yes, this woman wins the prize for best comment. She pointed out the most important part of learning, reinforcement. Now, in our study, we used praise, but for your kid, you might have to use something else. You might have to buy them a treat, a toy, take them to their favorite restaurant where they can eat unhealthy food and run around and climb through plastic tunnels that have the unmistakable scent of urine, and then play games spending $20 to get a plastic little spider ring that they will eventually lose in a ball pit. The point is, you need to reward your child for correctly demonstrating what you've been teaching them.
Okay, I'm gonna call her. Hello, your child. Ryan Oceans is missing. There you go.
Woohoo!
Yay!
So you tested it out
I'll
in the
try.
store to make sure I knew it. I had the rules.
Yes.
We role played it, and you made sure I knew it. And then like you said, good job, and all that. Now we're good to go.
We're good to go.
All right.
Done?
High five right there.
Yeah.
So there you have it. Give your child the rules, get out there and practice, and reward your child for responding correctly. For more information, please visit us online at autismresearchgroup.org. I'm Ryan Bergstrom. Thanks for watching. Yes, ding, no. Yes, this woman wins the first. Yes, this woman. Yes, this woman wins the best. Yes, this woman wins the first place. Yes, this woman wins. Why can't I say woman? Yes, this woman wins. What's the line? Yes!
Welcome back to Autism Live. We're so excited because joining us via Skype right now, we have Cindy Vanden Bosch, and she is coming to us. Today we're going to be talking about the Museum Access Consortium, but Cindy is also the founder of Turnstile Tours, which we're going to talk about what that does. All of these things kind of go hand in hand and help individuals on the autism spectrum to be able to have access to things that are really important, like museums. So first of all, Cindy, welcome to Autism Live.
Thank you so much for having me.
We're so excited that you're here. I had mentioned to you that one of the things that we like to do in our free time in our family is to go to museums. I think that museums and cultural events are a great thing for individuals on the autism spectrum, and you are somebody who is at the forefront of making that happen, not only in your area, but really helping people to have access to information that can help make that possible around the world. So first of all, let's talk about the Museum Access Consortium and tell us what your role is with that organization.
Sure. So the Museum Access Consortium is an organization that brings together people who work in cultural institutions with members of disability communities. So it could be disability advocates, people who have disabilities themselves, to work together to improve accessibility for people with disabilities at cultural institutions. And Museum Access Consortium focuses primarily on the New York metro area, but as you mentioned in your introduction, our impact has become broader, especially in recent years. But my role at the Museum Access Consortium, I've been on the steering committee as a volunteer for about 7 years, and was recently co-chair of the organization, and have also led a 4-year project that focuses specifically on developing best practices around improving accommodations for visitors on the autism spectrum.
And you guys just recently had an event, which was part of the reason that I found out about it, and I found out about you. Tell us a little bit about the event that you guys had, because I just think it's remarkable.
Sure. So one of the things that the Museum Access Consortium does, and does really well, is that we host professional development workshops. So we bring together all of these communities that I referenced earlier. And on February 25th, we hosted a program called Enhancing Autism-Friendly Programs. And this was the 10th professional development workshop we've hosted in 4 years, and was really a culminating event for us, because we've been through the years, inviting parents of children on the autism spectrum, adults who have autism to come and meet with us and share their feedback about the experiences that they've been having, not just at museums, but also at the zoos, at libraries, at theater spaces all over New York. And so the event that we hosted a few weeks ago featured 10 different short presentations by representatives from cultural institutions speaking about specific areas of best practice. And as a result of that presentation, we documented it. It's now up on our website. So we do have an audio recording if anyone, any of your viewers would like to see that, as well as a slideshow presentation that helps to illustrate what the topics are that are being discussed by the panelists.
And so tell us where we would go to be able to watch and see that.
Sure. So the website is museumaccessconsortium.org.
Okay.
So museumaccessconsortium.org.
And it's really kind of amazing when you stop and think about it, because you were telling us yesterday, and I want you to share with our viewers some of the different things that people have found to be successful. And I think having that discussion amongst these different institutions where somebody can say, here's the issue that we discovered and we did something about it, here's what we did about it. I think that brings so much awareness to the other organizations who may never have realized before, oh, you know, we have that as well. So tell us some of the different accommodations that have been made with some of these institutions that have really been positive.
So I'd be happy to do so. So at the workshop the other day, we sort of broke it out into 3 different sections. The first section of presenters spoke about best practices in terms of just getting your toes wet and getting started, building capacity, training your staff. And what we find in that area, as with any good program or undertaking for that matter, is that you need to do your homework. And some of the most successful programs have been born out of getting your staff outside of your institution's walls, out into the community. So going out into classrooms, the museum at Eldridge Street, which is a historic synagogue on the Lower East Side, we did a demonstration project with them, and their staff, they had some of their volunteer docents as well as their full-time staff go out to 6 different institutions, some of which were schools where they could meet with children on the autism spectrum, talk to the teachers, but then they also went to well-established programs that have a track record, like the Queens Museum has done autism programming for years and years, as has the Metropolitan Museum of Art and the MoMA. They have programs for people with developmental disabilities. So really learning from people that have been designing and developing these programs, and learning from the public and from parents. So building those relationships is key. And then finding the right partner for your particular institution. So for example, right now, the Museum of Chinese in America here in New York, they are partnering up with a nonprofit organization that works with children on the autism spectrum and adults, but that also works with the Chinese speaking community. So you have to consider how to design a partnership where it's going to be kind of a dialogue and touch and go at the beginning, because what we find is that cultural institutions, sometimes practitioners need to reconsider how they design their programs. So maybe rather than focusing on content, the learning objectives might have something more to do with social skills development or life skills development. One example of that that's excellent is the New York Transit Museum, which is located in a historic subway station here in New York City. That is a place where you can experience trains from over time. They saw a growing population of people on the autism spectrum coming out to their institution and wanted to respond to this by offering opportunities to help families, both children and adults with developmental disabilities, learn independent travel skills and use their subway space for that. So they've partnered up with therapists who are involved in the development of these programs, and the Office of Travel Training, which is based at District 75, which is the New York City Public Schools, that teaches independent travel to young people. So these are the types of considerations where you might, at first glance, think about how cultural institutions can accommodate needs. and not necessarily as a member of the public realize that there are representatives within these institutions that are thinking about how they can play a role in life skills and social skills development in their programs.
It's really a wonderful thing to realize. I always say to our viewers, you know, while we're worrying about the fact that there aren't enough services, that there are brilliant minds such as yourself, Cindy, who are working on finding ways for our community to get more enjoyment out of life, more cultural experiences, and more education. So it is really a wonderful, warm fuzzy that you're giving all of us today by letting us know that this many people are working so hard to do something that makes so very much sense. Now, I want to look at this from two different points of view. For people who aren't in the New York area and who are hearing this and saying, boy, I know I went to my local museum recently and we had an experience that I wish we hadn't had, and I'd love to get them information about this. All of the things that you guys do, you're making available so that other organizations can learn from them. So for that family, they can encourage that site. Next time you go to a museum and it's not the positive experience, or someone just does something that's just not well informed, they can make them aware of what you're doing, and hopefully they will educate themselves. But for the families who are in the New York area who want to take advantage of a lot of the things that you have going on, what do you suggest for them? Where can they find out where all these programs are?
So just this year, the Museum Access Consortium launched on our website a public programs calendar that's searchable by disability. So Museum Access Consortium actually also hosts professional development workshops about accommodating the needs of a wide variety of audiences of people that have disabilities. But we put up a public programs calendar that for the tri-state area, at least, cultural institutions are welcome to list their programs, and then the public can find out about them. One of the things that we discovered over the last several years, inviting in all these parents and adults on the spectrum and people from different communities, they said it's great that you're working on so many initiatives, but we have no idea how to find out about them. So we do have a public programs calendar, and we're also growing a group programs portal on our site. But you know, we're not the only organization that exists like this. There is a grassroots there are grassroots efforts all over the country. There's a cultural access network that's based in New England. There's another one in Chicago. There's one out in San Francisco. And I'd be happy to, we'll be posting information about that on our site as well. But for people that want to advocate and want to educate their local cultural institution about how they can improve their practices, I do think that most individuals that work at museums or zoos or aquariums or different public resources, they would be interested in learning what they can do better. And thankfully, we now have many resources that are posted on our website in the resources section. So they could always just send a link and say, hey, here's what a bunch of cultural institutions are doing in terms of developing social narratives to reduce anxiety for visitors on the spectrum. Or let's face it, like all of us benefit from social narratives.
Yes.
And preparing us and preparing our expectations, especially when you go to a big cultural institution, it can sometimes be intimidating. So, you know, institutions here in New York, like the Intrepid Sierra and Space Museum and the Metropolitan Museum of Art, have even made multiple different kinds of social narratives that are available to the public, depending on what age they might be or what program they might be coming to properly prepare. So there's that. There's also visual vocabulary, how visual checklists. So examples of various different visual supports, as well as how museums are striving to create calm and quiet spaces where, let's say you go out with your family and someone in the family, whether it's the person on the spectrum or sometimes I get overwhelmed or just tired and I want to sit down and go to a quiet space. There are ways that you can help members of the public navigate to the quiet spaces in your institution. And the Met is an example. They have a sensory map on their website and on a page that provides resources for people with autism, and the sensory map shows you where the typically quieter spaces might be, so you can plan out your visit accordingly.
Well, I think it's incredible what you're doing, and we all deeply, deeply appreciate it, and we hope that more people learn. I do think that cultural institutions, as a rule, are very interested in this kind of thing. I will say that there's a lot that's unfolding in terms of Disneyland. Disneyland could take a page from what you're doing. But that's a whole other thing. But Cindy, I'd love to continue talking with you. We want to take a short break, but then I want to come back and talk about Turnstile Tours. I want for our audience to hear how you got involved in this arena and what you do with your individual business that I think everybody's going to be excited about. So everybody stick with us. We're going to be back with more with Cindy Vandenbosch after these messages.
Hi, I'm Lisa Ackerman. Welcome back to Talk of Facts. We hear questions all the time, and we want to give you the answers that help make your journey in autism easier and more navigatable. Less than a year ago, we interviewed the top 100 doctors in the United States working with children on the spectrum, and we asked them a question in the cloak of secrecy. What are the top 3 mistakes parents living with autism do? Number 1, and the one that makes me laugh the most, is when they use their physician as a marriage and family therapist. 1, the doctors told me it made them uncomfortable, and 2, they were highly unqualified to provide that type of advice. So the night before your physician appointment with your MAPS doctor, get together with your spouse, significant other, and write out the list of the targets and the agenda that you want to cover at the physician's appointment. Get in sync. Then you'll be definitely spending less time and not making that doctor so uncomfortable. Second thing that was the most common mistakes parents living with autism make is they want to go too fast. And really, you want to pace yourself in the autism journey. We all know that we want to get our kid to be the best they can be and hopefully recover from autism. And what a lot of the doctors have told me is that you want to really pace yourself. 1, to let the labs be your guide, and 2, work with your physician on the prioritization and the delivery of the different medical interventions. The third most common mistake they felt families made was giving up too soon. And what you need to know is they're invested, they're looking at wanting to get the best from your child. But I tell you that when I got that and consolidated the 100 interviews with these physicians, most of the doctors who brought that up had tears in their eyes. They want you to know that they're in the fight with you, and they want you to know that hope is really real. It may take hard work and it may take time, but to not give up and to stay in the game. So let Talka help you. We'll have some more Talka facts for you in the future, real questions and real answers for the autism journey.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We have with us right now via Skype Cindy Vandenbosch, and she's coming to us from the Museum Access Consortium, and we've been talking with her about this wonderful organization that works really hard to make more cultural places and events accessible for individuals both on the autism spectrum and with other individual needs. And one of the things we didn't get to talk about before, Cindy, was some of the different cultural events that are, music and theater and those kinds of things that have a whole different set of challenges that they face when they're trying to make an event more accessible. And I know you had some things that you wanted to share about what you guys are doing to help facilitate that.
Absolutely. So my personal experience, I did run a respite program for a couple of years. I coordinated a respite program for high school students on the autism spectrum and took them out to some shows in Times Square. And there is a challenge when you are, and as I'm sure many of your audience members can identify with, you can prepare your family member who has autism, with many different tools, but nevertheless, on the day of, you never know what you're going to run into. And there's an organization that's here in New York City called the Theater Development Fund, and they have a program where they actually buy up the house for Broadway shows and then adapt the setting. And they presented at our workshop about their unique challenges, where they work at a variety of different theaters and venues, and they try to create activity spaces that are out in the lobby or just outside of the theater in circumstances where someone might have a little bit of sensory overload and they need to step out and relax a little bit. But then they have to sort of create this balance between they don't want to make the activity spaces sort of too engaging so that people won't want to go back into the show. But they sometimes, I mean, a lot of these theaters can be very tiny, and they'll get a space that's like the size of a postage stamp that they need to work with. So that's sort of an interesting challenge. And then the Lincoln Center for the Performing Arts has sort of a model that they spoke about that's also included in more detail on our website. But they buy a set number of tickets that they distribute to families that have people on the autism spectrum for public performances. And so then you have a whole other set of considerations. They create visual schedules and visual vocabulary for people to use in advance. So it is sort of an interesting area. And honestly, how all of the various cultural institutions here in New York, how we've been learning together. And for the most part, it's the feedback that we get from the public, the dialogue that we have with individuals. I'm just so grateful to be on this show right now, because this is the community that has taught us so much about how we can do better.
Well, and thank you for that. And I do want to say to everybody who's watching how eager you guys are to learn. And if we come at it as a community from a positive standpoint, we're at a really good partnership. Because I can tell you as a parent that there were times when I thought we weren't going to be able to do these kinds of cultural things with our son, and we found the way to make it work, and we had some people who met us halfway, and it is, I have to say, one of the greatest gifts you can give your family, no matter what you're dealing with, but especially when you've got extra challenges at home, to be able to give your family an outing to go to something that is educational, inspirational, uplifting. It is life-changing. We took our son to the theater, and he began singing after seeing Peter Pan. It was absolutely life-changing. And all of our families, all of our kids deserve these experiences. So it's wonderful when we hear professionals such as yourself saying, we're more than willing to meet you halfway, we want to learn, we want to create access. It's just really inspirational, Cindy. And I wanted to turn now to talking about how you got into this, because you also own a company called Turnstile Tours. And tell us a little bit about what Turnstile Tours does.
Sure. So how I got into this, I've been in the museum world for about 10 years. And I worked at the Lower East Side tenement for many years, and ended up being the access coordinator there. So responsible for making the tours engaging for all visitors. And at the same time, I also managed the tours and the tour guides. And I realized as time went on that what I really loved was sharing stories and connecting with the public, and wanted to do it on my own. So after several years of balancing multiple different part-time jobs and doing museum consulting, I started Turnstile Tours a couple of years ago, and all of our tours operate in partnership with nonprofit organizations. So we give back to communities through the tours that we offer, both financially and also supporting the missions of those respective nonprofit organizations. So for example, we give a food cart tour in Midtown in the financial district, and we're partnered up with the Street Vendor Project, which helps street vendors advocate for themselves here in New York City and engage fairly in their trade. We're partnered up with the Brooklyn Navy Yard Center at Building 92, which is a visitor and exhibition center at the Brooklyn Navy Yard, which was the nation's foremost naval shipbuilding facility during World War II and even beyond. and is today an innovative industrial park with over 330 different companies. So we give all the public tours of the Brooklyn Navy Yard on behalf of the Brooklyn Navy, on behalf of the museum that's located there. And then we have other programs. The Brooklyn Army Terminal is also on the industrial waterfront in Brooklyn. And then a tour of a Latin American public market. But all of these various tours, the goal for us, the overarching goal for all the work that we do is to document stories that are underrepresented in the public record, whether they're historical or today, that we're all a part of history and making history now, and to foster connections between people of diverse backgrounds and really inspire in people a culture of sort of civic and community engagement.
So if I'm coming to the New York area and I'm interested in seeing some different things and having some adventures with my son, I can contact Turnstile Tours and know that you're going to give us a tour that is going to be uplifting and wonderful and deeply meaningful, but that we're also going to be on that tour with somebody who not only has an understanding of some of the challenges that we might encounter, but is actually interested in that.
Yeah, so
It's a little fascinating.
Yeah, so we're excited about that. I might have shared this with you when we spoke before, but at least personally, some of my most favorite tours have been for people on the autism spectrum, and that's because they help me. I might give a tour hundreds of times, but then I see the topic or the place in a totally different way, and I learn something new from the person who has autism, because we all think in different ways, right? And more than half of our staff members have experience working with people who have special needs. So one of our tour guides actually worked in a middle school classroom teaching students with developmental disabilities. Another woman oversaw accessibility for a cultural institution. Actually, she was at the Tenement Museum after I was, and she's now getting her PhD in studying disabilities. So we are psyched. We want to see you guys, and we're actually very excited. We'll be hosting. We haven't posted the dates yet, but we have a yard inspectors tour at the Brooklyn Navy Yard, which is for families and with children, and it's very hands-on experience, incredibly visual, multisensory. And it gets out into the shipyard. You get to see a functioning dry dock and how ships are repaired and fire boats and those sort of things. And we're adapting that to make it, we're going to be hosting special events where we bring in the public and try it out for the first time for families on the autism spectrum. So that's coming soon as well.
Cindy, I think it's so important for people in our community to know that people like you exist, who are excited about our community, who are excited about learning where our community can access what is already there and how to do that in a really positive way. Where can people find out more information about Turnstile Tours?
You can visit our website at turnstiletours.com, and it's Turnstile, not like the old-timey record player, but like the subway. So TURNSTILE.
Okay.
Tours.com. And I do want to say that, you know what? We're in this together, like in life, right? And this is about building community and being compassionate and learning from one another.
Well, we'd like to clone you, and you're a wonderful reminder. I think a lot of times autism families feel like they're in it alone, and I'm always telling them we're not. We're a big, huge community, and there are members of our community. You're a part of our community, Cindy, even though you didn't come to our community through a direct relation with a child or a family member on the spectrum. You have a passion for our community. You're a part of our community, and we all need to be cognizant of the fact that there are people in our community who are excited about the differences that we share and are excited about what our community brings to the table. So thank you for reminding us of that.
Thanks so much.
And we hope that you have a wonderful spring week in New York this week.
Yeah, you too. Thanks so much.
And happy St. Patty's Day.
Oh, you too.
All right. Take care, Cindy.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Wonderful, wonderful young woman, making a difference and a part of so many people coming together to create a higher awareness as we get ready to go into April and Autism Awareness Month. This kind of thing I think is so crucial. This is the kind of awareness that's really good. This is the kind of awareness we need more of. So stick with us. We're going to be back with more Autism Live after these messages.
Well, today is the One Hope Act Today for Military Families 10K and 5K Run, Walk, and Family Fun Festival.
Thanks for coming out to support this awesome cause.
What I'm trying to accomplish here is to get more people involved, more people to be aware of autism as a disorder so that they can be more involved in this effort to help people find resources.
Pull that belly button in, get a nice balance there.
This is an incredible event. I'm very passionate about it. Autism is affecting so many kids across the United States, and I also support our military.
2, 3, 4.
My name's Gunnery Sergeant Sean Tajma, working with the School of Infantry West. I'm currently running with 1st Light Armored Reconnaissance Battalion. I'm personally involved with this because my son Jacob has autism. I just want to say thanks to ACT Today for what they're doing to help my family and other military families with autism.
Here we go, let's hear it for the 2nd Light Infantry.
Some of the main sponsors here, of course, One Hope Wine is the title sponsor.
What we do is we donate 50% of our profits back to different partner charities, one of them being ACT Today that does a fantastic job.
ACT Today is very dear to my heart because when my husband was deployed, they were there when we didn't know how we were going to make things happen. They give so much to the military family, and it comes at a time when you just don't know how you're going to make ends meet. So to me, it's more than just an event, and it's more than just a grant. It's a gift.
All right, you guys, have we gone over the rules?
Thank you all to the teams, to the individuals that donated to this fantastic cause out here again this year. The event got larger.
People ask me why military families with autism. Why does ACT Today have that as a special program? I'll tell you why. Because our military families should not have to fight two battles. One, to protect our country, and another, to get services for their children. They move so often. Every time they move, they have to start again. We owe it to them. And it just was a tremendous success. So I just want to say thanks to everybody for taking part in it.
Check this out, Marine. See all these wonderful people? All you gotta do next year, Marine, Devil Dog, 2-400, sign up with me, staff or an email, and I'm gonna take you out here, do a little 5K, little PT early in the morning. After that, you're gonna have the time of your life. After that, I might even be able to get you a letter of appreciation, maybe a little libo time. How's that sound?
Sign up for next year because this is an event that comes on and on. It's a win-win situation here.
Welcome back to Autism Live. You know, our entire subject this week, our overreaching subject is autism and anxiety, which pretty much could cover everything, right? But I found it really interesting that yesterday there's a new article that's on NPR, npr.org. You can find it. The title of it is Clues to Autism Schizophrenia Emerge from Cerebellum Research. It's a really fascinating article, and I encourage you to take a look at it because they're finding out more and more about the brain and how different parts of the brain function. And in particular, they've been studying a small group of people that are born without a cerebellum over a period of time to see what they're good at and what they're not good at. One individual in particular that they interview for the article talking about how sometimes they have difficulty with abstract thinking, and some emotional instability if they're born without a cerebellum, but that over time, that their brain can compensate. And in doing this research, they're finding out that there might be more aspects of autism happening in the cerebellum than they had previously thought. But in all of these cases, they're discovering that it is possible to compensate with other areas of the brain if you're teaching the brain to compensate, which I think is really fascinating. I know I mentioned it on the show a couple of weeks ago that we have been watching a show called Brain Games. You can find it on Netflix, but it's also available, newer episodes are available on some cable channels. So I encourage you to check it out and find where it's playing in your area. It is so fascinating to watch it from the perspective of finding out what a neurotypical brain does. Because as I keep watching it over the years, as we've covered different research and you can begin to see what the differences are between an autism brain and a neurotypical brain. And just this morning, we were watching an episode talking about face recognition and noticing that for the rest of us, we put it together like a puzzle so that we see eyes and we see a nose and we see mouth, and then we clump it all together to recognize the person. And we're more and more research looking at how an autism brain looks at that entirely different, and that clumping the puzzle pieces of it all being separate may not be as reinforcing getting to know the whole of it as it is to the rest of us. Fascinating stuff. I particularly, if you're at all a science geek, and sometimes now I am, I didn't think I ever would be, but it's fascinating to me when I started to read about change blindness and mirror neurons, two separate things, but the whole idea that the rest of us, when we are watching, say, the Olympics or watching a sport, even if it's something we've never done before, like I can ice skate just enough to fall flat on my face, right? I don't know how to ice skate backwards, but I love to watch ice skating and see people flying and going backwards. It's very deeply enjoyable to me. And I keep thinking, boy, if I could just get my body to do it, my brain understands it. Well, it turns out that that's kind of true, that there's something called mirror neurons in our brain. And for those of us who are relatively neurotypical in our development with our brain, when we're watching a sports event and we see the ice skater going backwards, the part of our brain that would do that if we knew how to do it lights up. And in a sense, our brain is participating with the individual who's doing it. It's taking data and doing things, and it on a brain scan will literally light up the same part of the brain that we would use to do it. And it's mirroring it. That's why we call it the mirror neurons. What we find is that with kids on the autism spectrum, that part doesn't light up as easily as it does for the rest of us. Now imagine at the age of 2, that might not make a huge, big difference. But the neurotypical 2-year-old, the mirror neurons light up when they're 2, and they continue to light up, and they continue to light up at 3, right? And the brain is taking a whole bunch of data in between to be able to do something at 6 that maybe the child didn't know how to do, but if the brain has that much experience. Imagine the 2-year-old who the brain doesn't light up for that, and it continues to not light up and continues to not light up. When we get to age 6, the amount of experience that those 2 different 6-year-olds are bringing to a new experience is vastly, vastly different. So we started in our house thinking about how could we potentially light the mirror neurons up more. And some preliminary research suggests that having a physical mirror that moves when they move, an avatar, helps to light up the mirror neurons. So when sometimes on the show I'll refer to, well, that's why we got a Wii. But now all of the different game systems have that sort of avatar experience through one way or another, where the individual is moving and the mirror is moving opposite them. Honestly, as I think about this, my child was fascinated with mirrors. And when he was little and he would look at him, if he ran by the television set and saw his reflection, he would stop and look at his reflection in the mirror. I don't know why faces were so much easier for him in a mirrored surface. He could make eye contact with me through the mirror, still can, much easier. If he is doing FaceTime with someone, he can make eye contact much easier. So I don't know what it is about that, but what a great thing to be able to use that kind of technology, playing games, to help light up the mirror neurons in our kids. Of course, research is being done, and I think in the next year we're going to see a tremendous amount of research about the benefits of that kind of stuff. It's still, looking like it might be beneficial, but if our kids are reinforced by video games, and if you were thinking, oh, I just don't want them to be playing that much, maybe play a little scientist on your own, have your own petri dish at home, and see what happens with your child if you play with them in that sort of way, with encouraging the avatar experience. We saw that it had great benefits for our child. All right, and definitely read about this article looking at all the different things that the cerebellum might have to do with that we previously didn't know about, and that's on npr.org today. A story by John Hamilton. All right, we're going to take a break and go now to the A Word. This is an ongoing documentary being made by the Center for Autism and Related Disorders following a little boy, Jack Riley, who was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2. Take a look now. He's been doing therapy for a couple of weeks. His family is trying to find the rhythm of allowing a bunch of strangers into the home to interact with their child. Jack Riley, there are aspects of it that are really exciting and really fun, but every now and then he wants to revert back to doing it the way he used to do it because it was comfortable that way for him. It wasn't growing, but it was comfortable for him. So sometimes they're going to be in an impasse, and it gets hard, but it's worthwhile. So take a look. This is the A Word.
I just wanted to ask you how you're adjusting with all these people coming in and out of the home.
Half of me is used to it. Half of me is no longer freaking out about how clean my house is, clearly. The other half of me is still really overwhelmed. And, if there's talk of one more thing that we add to our list for that week, sort of freaks me out, at least initially.
Well, it's easier now. It was very strange the first week. He's making progress. It's sort of relentless. When you think you have a moment to relax, oh, wait a minute, 9:30, so-and-so is showing up. But it's just an adjustment. It's not overwhelming necessarily. There are times where you just need an hour and it's not coming. But we've developed a fondness for all you guys, so that makes it easier. And he's making progress, so who really cares how inconvenient it is?
What color?
You're funny.
I like Spider-Man.
You're funny. You were such a clever.
Hey! She's not a jungle gym.
You're funny.
Hey.
You're funny. You're funny. Go. Hey, you wanted to go color. Yeah, go color.
Yeah, come here.
Color.
I have colors for you. Here. Do you want green or orange? Which one's orange? Green or orange? Orange, yeah. Good job.
Yes, I see changes in him every day. Today we went to OT and just watching him climb up a rope. And he got to the top and he was on a ledge, and she had to show him how to turn over on his belly to climb back down. And he did it again, and he got to the top and he remembered. He knew to turn on his belly and do it. So just watching how he's soaking up stuff and being able to adapt it so quickly is pretty impressive. Now, if only that would work with the eating. That's probably still our biggest challenge, is eating.
Yeah, eating's it's a task. The therapist came out because he needed to eat, and it probably took him 10 minutes to really take his first bite. But what he'll eat and how he'll eat and when he'll eat are very challenging stuff.
I think the goal is to develop the relationships with the girls first, and to be more compliant on behaviors that don't involve food or eating. He gets really worked up when new foods are introduced to him. It's a good 10, 12 minutes before he'll even consider eating anything else. So we have to get past that and probably introduce it to him a lot and let him play with it more and just get that fear or anxiety out of him. But it's going to be a slow process, I think.
He's making something very intricate. And I'm surprised. I was talking to Suzanne because he's so into textures and how things feel, and I was surprised that he even wanted to touch it.
We had peaches in front of him today with applesauce and tried to make it fun to run trains through, and he was not happy about the whole thing.
Can we squish it?
Are you all done with the Play-Doh?
Yeah, let's go.
All
Let's
done.
go clean up.
how has it been like just adjusting to there's days when he's having therapy and he's having difficulty, he's crying, and
Those are hard on us because I think we're both overly sensitive anyway, and he's your son. Those days haven't been that many where he's like emotionally drained or anything. I think he's made the adjustment maybe better than we have.
Thursday, I remember sitting in my office and hearing him cry pretty hard, and I had to call a girlfriend. Mike was gone, so I had to call a girlfriend, and I was pretty close to tears. And she talked me off the ledge, which was a good thing. But since then, it's been easier to hear him. I haven't heard it as bad, or it hasn't felt as bad, but I know it's good for him, and I know that he's being asked to do things that he's not used to being asked to do. So there's nothing wrong with that.
This one. What color? Green. Yeah.
Last night, there were bubbles on a page, and not only did he say bubble and pointed at all the bubbles, but then he decided to pop the bubbles and started saying pop. And so he's using the words right, you know. And that book, I think we went through every page, and he found something on every page that he knew the word for.
I'll get him. Pop.
Nothing is easy for him anymore, even with us. I think if he wants to do anything or if he wants to try anything, he has to ask us for it or say the color or do something. So I think we learned that from ABA.
Pocoyo or Baby Babble? Babble.
Good choice.
Baby Babble.
Baby Babble. That's good talking.
Bubbles.
Bubble.
Pop. If he's watching a video with you, he turns and make sure you get. Did you hear that? Did you hear that? So he's fully engages you to make sure you're paying attention. And, that's great because I like when he looks at my eyes.
Welcome back to Autism Live. That was The A Word, an amazing ongoing documentary. You can watch this entire series, and in fact, I really hope that you certainly will watch more than one episode because there's so many things to gain from The A Word, but one of them is the scope and the arc. And in particular, in the beginning, I love that we get to see this family grow and morph, and that it shows sort of the different phases that you go through. You know, I always think of it as that the first, which I believe is the worst, which is your child's been diagnosed and you found out about ABA and you're like, I just want to do that so bad, and then you have to wait. And it doesn't matter who you are or where you found out about ABA, what insurance you have, how much money you have in your bank account. There is a period of time in which you have to wait. On the good side and the best possible circumstances, with Kismet being on your side and the odds being in your favor, and the best possible circumstances, the quickest I've ever heard it starting for somebody is in 3 weeks. And I've heard one person say that it's much closer to 3 months. And for some people, it takes longer than that. I think that 3 months is what everybody should just sort of settle into, the idea of, okay, from when I identified that I wanted to start ABA, that in the most ideal circumstances that it's going to take 3 months. And there's a bunch of reasons for that, none of which have to do with too terribly much, except that, it will take your insurance company that long to fill out the paperwork and do things. It will take you that long to get started. It will take your ABA provider that long to staff a team and get all the things together so that you arrive at that moment when the first therapist comes to your door. Now, I will say to you that don't take that 3 months and go, well, it's lost, and spend the whole time crying into your pillow. I did that. It doesn't really do anything for you in the long run, right? I know the tack that we took during that 3 months was that I was frenetic in saying there's got to be something that I can do in this time. Now, there wasn't at that time, because I was trying to read about things, but when I say to you what there wasn't a card book back then, and there wasn't anybody's book back then about ABA that would really explain to me the scope of what we were about to do. I tried to find it. I went to the library and I got videos of things. There was one video in particular of a mom describing putting a team together, and I about ran into the street because it seemed so overwhelming what this woman had done. But what we did find about, I did say to one speech therapist, or I think it was an OT, that I said, what can we be doing during this time? And they said, well, there is that diet thing. You could always try that if you wanted to. And that ended up being, and she said, I don't think it works. Everybody says it doesn't really work, but a lot of parents feel better if they're doing something. That was the context in which she gave it to me. But I would say to you that times have changed, but that wasn't such a bad thing to do, because what I would say to you is get your child as healthy as you can. Now, that might be a diet. For other people, it might be something else entirely, right? It's not one size fits all. We got lucky, and putting my son on the diet was something, and we put him on the GFCF diet, set us up for the success when we did start therapy. I think it was about 3.5 months later. Actually, that's not true. It was about 6 months from that moment when we started the diet. So, but I wasn't actively seeking ABA then, because I didn't know what I was talking about. Now I do, about this respect. But in any case, taking whatever time, that lag time, and using it to its most useful, which definitely on that list is getting your child healthy, getting everybody in the family as healthy and well rested as you possibly can, which may mean that you got 5 minutes more sleep than you did before. But let me tell you, every 5 minutes is going to count once you get into this part of the intervention, where they're going to start to disrupt the pattern that you all created. I love having an opportunity, and I take the opportunity whenever I can to speak to therapists and to say to them, from the parent's point of view, please remember that when you come into our homes, we have found a admittedly messed up way of coping with difficult situations, but it's the way we found to cope. It might mean, like in my house, that when my child throws the tantrum, that we totally give into it, because that's the way that we get the child to not be screaming, so that we can get back to some semblance of calm. Yeah, I get it now that it isn't working, but on that day, at that time in my life, that was the only thing that worked. That's the only tool I had, was to give into the tantrum. And it's the job of the therapist to come into the house and tear that coping mechanism down and give us other ones. It's scary. It's very scary. And I ask them to remember that sometimes as parents, we get like, why are you doing that? And get even angry at the therapist and going, you can't do that. Don't take that away from him. Don't you know what's going to happen? For them to remember that our anxiety is real, that's coming from that moment when they take away the coping mechanism. It's good, and they need to, but if they understand that we will be filled with fear and anxiety, they'll have an easier time of doing it, right? So make use of your time beforehand. And then when the therapist comes to the door on that first day, it feels like, oh, thank goodness, because everything is going to get better. But there is a period of time in which, maybe for a little period of time, where they get rapport, where we go, whoo, man, oh, it's all going to be okay. But at some point, they have to break the current status quo of this is how we deal with behavior, and start to teach us all how to cope differently. And then it's get the uncomfortable police. Bring it on, because that will bring some anxiety. Remember when you taught your child how to walk, and the child toddled and fell and hit their head, and the anxiety that brought, right? But none of us said, well, enough, that's it. There's no more walking because you're going to get hurt while you're learning how to do it. None of us said that, for a very good reason, because we knew that we were going to get to the good stuff. I promise you, hang out during this hard part of ABA if you're there. Hang out. Put your faith in these people. Learn what they know. Be a part of the team. And you will get to the good part too. That uncomfortable won't stay forever. I promise you. I promise you. It's so, so very worth it. Okay, check out the A word. Watch that scope. All right, we're going to take a break. And then when we come back, we've got Dr. Linda Copeland joining us via Skype. She's going to be answering your questions. Don't forget, she's a developmental pediatrician and a board-certified behavior analyst. I'm not kidding. I didn't make it up. She's a unicorn. Both of those things in one person, and she's here with us. So stick around. You're going to want to hear her answers. We'll be right back after these messages.
Riley has high-functioning autism, and I'd say I noticed somewhere between 9 months and a year. Looking back now, I can tell you everything. I mean, there was no pointing, there was no shared experiences, speech was not coming, the interactive play was not coming, those things weren't happening. You know, you go to the pediatrician, they tell you, well, sometimes boys are slow or things might take a while to come along, but it still wasn't happening. And right when he hit the 2-year-old room in preschool is when the wheels fell off the wagon. That's when we got some intervention. That's when we figured out, you know, how are we going to address this problem. The first thing I did was I got a mentor, because there's no book on what to do with your autistic child. I mean, there's many books, but each path is individual. So I got a mentor, a really nice woman named Marlene. She has a daughter with Asperger's, and she told me, go to a psychiatrist so you can have your child fully diagnosed and a rock-solid diagnosis that can't really be attacked. Call CARD and do whatever they tell you to do. That was probably the thing she talked about the most. Get in touch with CARD. And she actually put me in touch with Evelyn from CARD. And calling CARD was like amazing, because I really felt like things were finally going to be okay. We were going to get the help we needed.
We tried a number of different things before we could get into CARD, and you could really see the difference in the data keeping, really addressing what his issues were, whereas the other places we had been, it seemed pointless to me.
We've talked about this, and I feel like we met a lot of really nice, well-intentioned people.
Right.
And then when we got to CARD, we met a lot of really nice people who could help us because they had the experience. It was ABA, which I think is the only way to go with your child if you're trying to overcome autism. And if you go to CARD, the people are so qualified, and there's so much of a database on how to approach this. It's just like they come right in, and we started off with, let's have Riley sit down for 2 seconds, because he couldn't even get that. And we worked on baby steps until now he's in 1st grade and he's working at grade level. So it just starts with baby steps, and it keeps working on, because they have a way to approach every single problem, every single tantrum, every single thing you're going to come up with. They have a way to approach it and help you get through it.
Yeah, I'm always amazed, like at our clinic, we'll be having a specific problem, and how good they are, all of them, the therapist and your team leader, at coming up with a solution, something to try, and it almost always works. Whatever the particular behavior you're trying to deal with, they're really good at them. They know the answers.
He likes a lot of stuff I think regular 7-year-olds like. He likes to swim.
He loves to swim.
He's a fish. Likes to ride a scooter, loves Toy Story, loves playing on the iPad.
Loves Justin Bieber.
Good job, buddy.
High five.
High five.
High five.
Yeah.
CARD's been good about encouraging us to do things that maybe wouldn't occur to us, like him learning to ride a bike was really them saying, hey, it's time, let's do this, and helping us do that, and so he can ride a bike. He's still working on the brakes a little bit, but you know, he can pedal a bike. We can go to Balboa Park and he'll ride happy as a clam along the bike path.
If you think something's wrong, it's not about you. Don't bury your head in the sand. Go get help, because the help is out there to make your life and your child's life just so much better. And if you're lucky enough to get in with CARD, I can't even tell you what a difference it's made in our lives. From 4 years ago, just the quality of life we have, the quality of life Riley has, the progress he's made from being a child who wanted to stay in his room and play Toy Story and line up his Toy Story dolls all day, to a 1st grader who's working at grade level. It couldn't have happened without CARD intervention, without ABA, and without all the wonderful people we met there.
Hello, fellow activists. In our last segment, we talked about step number 2, educate yourself. Step number 3, is get support. Now, any journey can feel overwhelming if you feel like you're walking it alone. Well, you're far from alone, because with 1 in 50 kids diagnosed with autism today, there are a lot of us out there. Of course, there's always the issue of financial support. Now, there's a handful of organizations out there that offer financial support to families in need. ACT Today, or Autism Care and Treatment Today, is one of them. Visit our website at www.act-today.org to find out more about our grant process. I want to talk about a different kind of support today, emotional support. Now, you can get that from other travelers on this path. Some of the best advice I've ever received is from the moms of other kids with autism who went to school with Wyatt or were involved with programs with him. Then there are the pioneers. These are the families that have gone through this years ago, and there was very little information out there. All of these people seem to have the desire to pay it forward. Now, one of them, Lisa Ackerman, who is one of my mentors, started an organization called TACA, Talk About Curing Autism. She actually took the concept of mentors and support groups and made it available to everybody. You can go to their website, talkaboutcuringautism.org, to find out more. During the first and most difficult year after Wyatt's diagnosis, I wrote an email to close family and friends, letting them know what was going on and the challenges our family was facing and why we dropped out of sight. I was amazed at the outpouring of love and affection and all the help I received from that email. First, you have to be vulnerable. You can't be afraid to ask. Try this out. Could you cook me a meal? Are you going to the market? Can you pick me up a few things? Could your kids play with my kid and make them feel included? Or can you come over and clean my house? Well, maybe not that last one, except with your best friend. And maybe the best support of all is having someone that listens, and that doesn't cost a dime. So until next time, surround yourself with the loving kindness of others and keep the faith.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We are having, I mentioned at the start of the show, we have gremlins. It's St. Patrick's Day, but it's like Friday the 13th here. We're having gremlins. So we're trying to get a hold of Dr. Copeland, who's trying to pick up the phone on the other end, and something about the internet doesn't want us to do that. So we're sorting that out. But while we see if we can get Dr. Copeland, I'm just going to deal with some of the different things that you guys have written in. We asked you the question of the day today. We wanted to know what's preventing you from being able to travel. Somebody wrote in and said, "Hi, Shannon. Always good to hear your cheerful voice." And thank you. I try to be cheerful whenever I can manage it. Question of the day, the travel challenges, food and environmental allergies. First thing we think of is what to feed our son on a long flight and safe restaurants to eat. Then finding a hotel with no carpets, and it's expensive to travel. It certainly is expensive to travel. I've got them in the earpiece, Calby, just so that you know. In any case, it is expensive to travel. But, you know, if you do some planning in advance on all fronts, it can help to quiet your fears. And I say always plan in advance and then have a backup plan and be ready to punt. Because a lot of times the planning that we do is just an exercise in strengthening a muscle so that we can be ready for whatever happens, right? Don't get attached to, I planned this, it was going to go a certain way, because it'll never work out that way. I know our family's been saying for a while that we really want to go to Scotland, that's something my husband and my son and I really want to do. And just the other day when I was planning for this show, I was thinking, have I even thought about how do you do GFCF in Scotland? Have I even considered, you know, what I would have to do to make that work? And I thought, now let's just calm down for a second. So I did a little preliminary research and went online and put in GFCF Scotland, and found that there are all kinds of websites that tell you all different places that you can go, that if you can get GFCF haggis, my goodness, I'm sure that you can work just about anything out. Excuse me. Now, you know, when we travel, and we have not traveled abroad with our son, so I think that that's an adventure that I can't wait to try. We have always been able to take some stuff with us, and to call ahead to certain specialty places to be able to say, can you make sure that you have this in stock so that we can buy it? Because, you know, sometimes you just can't take as much food with you. But I know that if we do go to Scotland, I'm going to be calling in advance and saying, you know, can I special order some of this? You can have stuff shipped to the hotel. And that companies are happy to do that for you, or you can order from the little stores. When my son and I 2 summers ago we were driving a U-Haul truck with my mom's piano that she had given to him from Iowa to California. We had little stops planned along the way. There was a wonderful little health food place in Nebraska that we had said, you know, what time are you opening on this Saturday? Because we're going to be stopping and we're going to get some food. And they were able to cook some food for us. It was fabulous. And knowing that you have those places along the way where you can recoup, and if nothing else. And then, you know, we had our adventure. There were things that we hadn't planned on, and you do what you can. Now, as far as the carpeting goes, for the hotels, that's a much harder thing, isn't it? And I wonder if what you would find if you did Airbnb, if that would be a different experience, because most big hotels, they're just going to carpet from one end to the other. So in any case, do you want to go to a break, Kelby? We have Dr. Copeland. All right. So we're going to take a short break. We've got Dr. Copeland. We're going to be right back after these messages. Stick with us.
Hi, I'm Lisa Ackerman. Welcome back to Talk of Facts. We hear questions all the time, and we want to give you the answers that help make your journey in autism easier and more navigatable. Less than a year ago, we interviewed the top 100 doctors in the United States working with children on the spectrum, and we asked them a question in the cloak of secrecy. What are the top 3 mistakes parents living with autism do? Number 1, and the one that makes me laugh the most, is when they use their physician as a marriage and family therapist. 1, the doctors told me it made them uncomfortable, and 2, they were highly unqualified to provide that type of advice. So the night before your physician appointment with your MAPS doctor, get together with your spouse, significant other, and write out the list of the targets and the agenda that you want to cover at the physician's appointment. Get in sync. Then you'll be definitely spending less time and not making that doctor so uncomfortable. Second thing that was the most common mistakes parents living with autism make is they want to go too fast. And really, you want to pace yourself in the autism journey. We all know that we want to get our kid to be the best they can be and hopefully recover from autism. And what a lot of the doctors have told me is that you want to really pace yourself. 1, to let the labs be your guide, and 2, work with your physician on the prioritization and the delivery of the different medical interventions. The third most common mistake they felt families made was giving up too soon. And what you need to know is they're invested. They're looking at wanting to get the best from your child. But I tell you that when I got that and consolidated the 100 interviews with these physicians, most of the doctors who brought that up had tears in their eyes. They want you to know that they're in the fight with you, and they want you to know that hope is really real. It may take hard work and it may take time, but to not give up and to stay in the game. So let TACA help you. We'll have some more TACA facts for you in the future, real questions and real answers for the autism journey.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We are so thrilled because we have Dr. Linda Copeland with us via Skype. Dr. Copeland, so thrilled that you're here. We've had a gremlin morning, so it took us a little bit longer to connect with you, but we're thrilled that we have you, thrilled that you're here. For our viewers who've never met Dr. Copeland before, she is both a board-certified behavior analyst and a developmental pediatrician. I call her a unicorn because people don't believe that such a thing could exist, but she does. And she joins us once a month to be able to answer your questions. So Dr. Copeland, we appreciate you being here.
Oh, I'm always happy to be here.
And we're going to tell everybody right from the start that you are wonderful and consider the environment. So from time to time, at some point in our interview, the lights will go off in your studio. We'll wait for you to turn them back on, and that's perfectly okay. I'm going to jump right in here. We had a bunch of questions, and I will tell everybody we're not going to get to all the questions today, especially the ones that most recently came in, but we will then tune in next month to see the answer to your question you asked this week. Okay, so Dr. Copeland, I have a 12-year-old daughter, nonverbal and still in diapers. We have always had problems with meltdown, but as she is getting older and stronger, so are they. I heard that broccoli can help. Is this the green or a vitamin form? So talk to us about because a new study came out about this.
Oh, right. Well, first of all, with meltdowns, always do your ABA, get that functional assessment. What is the function of the problem behavior? Work on it behaviorally, but you can also support the nutrition and the metabolism. So the study related to an active food ingredient in broccoli called sulforaphane. And yes, it can be in the natural food. It's particularly highest in broccoli sprouts, but there is some in mature broccoli as well. They also make pill form for older kids who could swallow pills. It's generally pretty safe. It's spelled, there's different spellings, but one way is sulforphane, sulforaphane. So you could look that up on the internet. The neat thing is you can grow your own broccoli sprouts in a jar sprouter that you get from Amazon.com, and Park Seeds makes some organic seeds. They'll sprout in 3 to 5 days. You can periodically harvest your own. And sulforaphane, it's a good antioxidant. It's good for you, the parents, and one scientific study showed that because of its antioxidant properties, it really significantly helped the behavior and clinical presentation of individuals with autism. They ranged in age from about age 13 to 27, but even little children can have sulforaphane in their broccoli sprouts.
And so, Dr. Copeland, is this something that's a prescription, or we just buying it over the counter?
You can buy it over the counter. It's really pretty safe, and I think a great way to get it is through your food. So any of the cruciferous vegetables, like your mature broccoli and Brussels sprouts, will have some of it, and it depends on how you cook it. Steaming is a little better than microwave, and those are much better than boiling. You don't want to boil it for a long time because that will destroy the sulforaphane. So I think a natural way to make it is to just grow your own broccoli sprouts. Very easy to do in a sprouting jar, very inexpensive. And you want to be careful with your green smoothies because you don't want to use a lot of spinach or high oxalate type of green leaves in a smoothie. But the broccoli sprouts would be very nice to do in a nutritious smoothie.
Wonderful. I'm going to move on to this next question. Hi, Shannon and Dr. Copeland. So happy to get some feedback on my 4.5-year-old son's health situation. Around May last year, the pediatrician put my son on Claritin because he was getting frequent colds with coughs. He missed about a month of school. This year around October, they switched him to Zyrtec, but they never ran any tests besides visually inspecting his nose. No allergy tests were run. They switched him to Zyrtec because they said he could be getting immune when he started getting sick, often with his main symptoms being stuffy nose and coughing. During this time, since October, my son has been sick and is still sick. He has had 3 eye infections like pink eye. We went to the allergy, sinus, and asthma specialist. He was put on prednisone for 10 days, antibiotics, albuterol, montelukast, I hope I'm saying that right, and fluctinase. Previously, in November, he was on amoxicillin. After 8 days after this specialist put him on all these medications and antibiotics, he came home with a fever, and they put him on a 7-day course of amoxicillin now for 7 days since another antibiotic didn't work. They also put him on albuterol with Pulmicort for his nebulizer. I don't like all the antibiotics he has taken in the last month, but I don't know what else to do since he is not getting better. He now has pink eye again in both eyes. This is making me very depressed to see him ill with constant energy and appetite. He is already a skinny guy, 36 pounds, and he turns 5 coming up here in April. He is also missing school and therapies, and now he's complaining of his ear hurting and having water in it. I just don't know what else to do. He takes Rainbow Light vitamin and Nature Way Prime Modophilus for children. He does not eat a lot, but a pretty rounded diet. He was tested for gluten and dairy and wasn't allergic. Can you give me any advice on what I should ask for to do next to help my son? Vitamins, probiotics, what do you suggest? I'm desperate.
Oh, this is a very complex case, and of course, we really empathize. You're doing the right thing. It's good that you took him to the allergist. He definitely needs those asthma and allergy medicines. As long as the allergy doctor is treating him, you want to follow that. So the albuterol and the pulmicort are important. The anti-allergy medicines can help, and that would at least kind of temporarily somewhat stabilize him while you're trying to figure out the underlying basis for his various allergies and frequent infections, and that can be tricky and hard to do. But you started the basic steps by seeing an allergist. Some other things to think about, yes, your question, you're already giving him a good vitamin, and you could do more of the probiotics, especially since he's been on frequent antibiotics to, try and help heal the gut from all of those antibiotics. So you're giving him Primodophilus. You could add Super Pro Bio Gold, for instance, from Kirkman Lab. That's one I like, or the therapeutic from Claire. Those are some other potentials. And as we discussed, I think last month, the fermentable foods, if he'll eat a little natural fermentable sauerkraut. But medically speaking, some of this may just be being young and exposed to a lot of germs from other kids. Otherwise, healthy children can get at least one infection per month. Usually they're viral. But he sounds like he's had more than his fair share of ear and sinus infections. And so it might be time to ask his doctor to at least do the start of a workup of his immune system to see if there's an immune system problem going on. And a good starting place for that is to do a test called quantitative immunoglobulins. Check his immunoglobulins. There's a blood test for that called the immunoglobulin test or serum immunoglobulins. And particularly, not uncommon, individuals can have low IgA and then various types of low IgG, subclasses of IgG. And if you're deficient in some of those, you get more frequent infections of the mucus system. So the ears, the sinus, the lungs, and it can predispose or interact with allergy. So that might be a really important test to do, because if he is low in that, then his doctor might want to refer him to an immunologist. And then you could try the sulforaphane. Interestingly, sulforaphane not only helps autism in a study, it's also being researched to help with allergies and asthma.
Amazing. So say that again for me, the test that we want to ask the pediatrician for, the quantitative
serum immunoglobulins.
Okay.
And immune globulins, it gets pronounced both ways.
And is that a test that our pediatrician will have ordered often, or should we expect it if they're a little like scratching their head with that?
Most pediatricians should have heard of it, because immune deficiency of the immune globulins is not rare, especially IgA deficiency. It's not something we think of every day or order every day, but it's part of our training in medical school and pediatric residency. So I don't think they should be scratching their heads over it.
Okay. I love the idea of that. And that's just something that we can go to our regular pediatrician and ask for, right, and get more information. Really very exciting. Now, when we get the test back, will our pediatrician immediately know what numbers to look for? What should we be looking for that test?
They would give a range, and you'd be, if they're normal, that's reassuring, and maybe he's just getting exposed to one bad bug after the other, and he just has to build his immunities. After about age 5 or 6, kids start getting fewer ear infections with their virus head colds and whatnot, just because of the growth of the head and the change in their anatomy. So if they're totally normal, that would be reassuring. You don't want just the total IgG. IgG is one of the immunoglobulins. You want to check some Ig subclasses. But if all of those are totally normal, it's reassuring. If he's low in IgA and or the IgG subclasses, that could explain why he's getting such frequent infections of the mucous membranes and why they keep coming back. And that, for that, the pediatrician would want to refer to an immunology specialist.
Okay. Great information. Great information. All right, moving on. Somebody writes in and says, "Hi, Dr. Copeland and Shannon. Thank you for your show. I love to watch. This show helps me to calm my anxiety as I hear positive advice. My doctor recently recommended an x-ray of my four-year-old's sinus and adenoids. He's been sick on and off for the last 3 months a lot. Before I put him through this ordeal and exposure to radiation, are there any other tests that could be run that would help me to put my mind at ease for putting him through this, like a sleep study? And thank you so much for your response."
Well, a sleep study may also be needed, but it's actually much harder to do a sleep study than a sinus and adenoid x-ray. I order sinus and adenoid x-rays fairly frequently, and actually I think that's a sign that your doctor's being a good doctor. The x-rays don't hurt. The heads and the structures of the head are not very sensitive to x-ray to begin with. And so the x-ray from a sinus and adenoid x-ray only has about the radiation of going out on a sunny day. So let me reassure you on that. I think the biggest issue is, would your child be afraid of the new situation? So, a little uncomfortable in the x-ray room and the big machine and new people. That would be the biggest issue. The x-ray is actually fairly quick once they get the child still for a moment, and it's painless, and it really gives the doctor a good information. A sleep study may be needed too but that's long and hard to do. It has to polysomnography. You need your pediatrician to order it. It takes a number of hours. It has to be in a certified sleep lab. They have to glue all kinds of electrodes to your child's head. So it's actually more of an ordeal to get, but it can be needed if there's really loud snoring that's interfering with the child's sleep, or long pauses when the child's breathing at night.
Yeah, I just had to go through 2 sleep studies personally myself, and both nights, and they were overnight, and both nights that I was there, the next room over was a child getting a sleep study, and it was different children both times. And I have to say, I felt so bad for the parents who were going through it, because it was uncomfortable for me. There's nothing, there's nothing really, truly horrible about it. But they put all this paste in you want to talk about sensory issues.
Right.
It's a sensory nightmare. They put a bunch of paste in your hair, and then they hook all these electrodes on it, and it's sort of like you have this long flowing tail of cords that's hooked up to a machine, and then they go, "Now sleep." And, I wanted to say to them, really, is anybody ever able to get to sleep with all of this? I just know it was really difficult. And I, of course, and then you're hearing people in the next room, and I was hearing a lot of crying going on. So I can see where it's a huge benefit for parents to get those results, but it isn't the easy cakewalk that you'd think it might be. Oh, a sleep study, it's like going to a hotel, except not.
So in comparison, a sinus x-ray is a party.
Yeah, and over and in and out, and nothing attached to your child's head, much, much easier. And I would think if a child is getting sick again and again and again, and if they're asking to see the adenoids, that it's likely that there might be an issue then, Dr. Copeland?
Right, and it gives really useful information.
Okay, really, really helpful. We're going to take a short break, and then we're going to come back with more questions for Dr. Copeland, so stick with us. There's been another new study about optimal outcomes, and I wanted to know, what are your thoughts on recovery? Do you think it's possible? Do you believe in recovery from autism?
On recovery, you learn how to adapt. I mean, I've had a lot of experimental brain scans done, and they have found things that are definitely abnormal. I have an enlarged left ventricle that's definitely abnormal. That's not going to go away. That scan was done less than 5 years ago. But you work with someone and they adapt. You're not going to make me an algebra specialist. That's just not going to happen. But things like getting better at public speaking, that is something that I gradually learned. What I'm seeing today, especially with some of the kids on the mild end of the spectrum, I'm seeing teenagers that are much milder than me, that haven't learned things like how to go up to the counter at McDonald's and order food all by themselves, how to go on the bus, how to shop, how to go in the store and shop, how to do a checkbook, basic things like that. Because what drives me crazy is when I go back to the cattle world and I see a guy in the maintenance shop that's running the whole maintenance shop at a big plant, and he's as Asperger's as he can be, and he's running a whole maintenance shop. And then I see Junior that's addicted to video games, and you can't get his duff off his chair and get him doing things. Now, when I was in high school, I did a lot of thinking about this. I got kicked out of a large girls' school for throwing a book, and I went to a special boarding school up on a farm, and I was allowed to work with the farm animals. And they let me goof off and not study. But I got to thinking, there's one thing they did not let me do. I goofed off and I didn't study, but I had to physically go to class. When I didn't want to go to the Friday night movie, they made me the projectionist. One thing they were not going to let me do is sit in my room, become a recluse in my room. They were not going to allow that.
I want to know why you threw the book. Why did you throw it?
Oh, I threw a book at a girl because she called me a retard.
Oh, good reason.
Oh, no,
to throw
she
it out.
teased me. And I had some problems getting in fights when kids teased me. But it was always brought about by someone picking on me. And the principal had me kicked out of school, out of a large girls' school for doing that.
And what'd your mom say?
Well, she was not very happy about the whole thing because when the principal called, I answered the phone and he said I was incorrigible and I was kicked out of school. Mother was really angry that he just said that right directly to me, which was definitely not very appropriate.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We have Dr. Linda Copeland with us via Skype. She is a board-certified behavior analyst and a developmental pediatrician, and we're so thrilled that once a month we have an opportunity to have her answer your questions here on Autism Live. So, Dr. Copeland, we have had so many questions about MRIs and EEGs. I think I've got 4 or 5 here, and I'm just going to go through them, and we're going to clump them all together. The first one, hi, Dr. C and Shannon. My son is 4. I was wondering, do you recommend your patients get MRIs? What other tests do you typically recommend if a child has fine motor, speech, and gross motor delays? What type of seizure tests do you recommend that are most accurate? Sometimes my son's energy levels and focusing are off, so not sure if it could be seizure or sleep issue, and thanks so much. Scrolling down, we've got more questions. Somebody asking about that their ENT is requesting a sleep study. Also wanted to check to make sure he's not having seizures. What kind of tests are more reliable to check this? He's 5, low weight, and some days he seems foggy and not able to focus and attend to questions that won't answer your questions right away. And thank you so much for your time. Appreciate your show. Another person who writes in and says, Lisa Ackerman on TACA Facts, which we show here on a regular basis, mentioned MRI brain scan and EEG. Is there a specific type we ask for? How often should we do this? And thank you, you are the best. Another person who says, I was watching the TACA Facts, and it mentioned that a child with ASD needs MRI and EEG. We have never been offered to do it, and before asking for a referral, I need to have a good understanding and reason for the doctor to agree. Would really appreciate your help and advice. Lots of love to you and everyone working on this amazing show. So lots of questions about the MRIs and the EEGs. Is it something that all of our kids should get, Dr. Copeland?
I don't think necessarily so. The American Academy of Neurology, their child neurology division, did not list an MRI as the standard part of the workup. It's tricky to do. It can be as difficult to do as a sleep study. You're never wrong for getting it, and if a family has a discussion with their doctor and they together agree they want to get it, that's great. What it shows is large-scale anatomy. And most of the time that's either normal or there's maybe mild abnormalities that we can't do anything about. That's why, because it's hard to get, most of the time it doesn't show anything that we can get anything about. It's not absolutely essential, but you're not wrong for getting it. Where it becomes more important is if there is new onset of seizures or other symptoms like severe recurrent headaches with vomiting, double vision, other unusual neurological symptoms, evidence of problems with the nerves that supply the muscles of our eyes and face, for instance. If your doctor and you see unusual signs like that, then the MRI may be very important to get imaging of the brain to see what may be going on. But the MRI is not particularly helpful in evaluating things like fine motor delay, speech and language delay, sleep problems, and so forth. With regard to seizures, we do know that children with autism spectrum disorder are at greater risk than the general population to have seizures. And that is more specifically evaluated through the EEG brain scan. And like the sleep study you mentioned, you have to have a lot of paste on the scalp and a lot of wires connected to electrodes on the scalp. So it takes a bit of doing to get an EEG. If you definitely strongly suspect seizures, like the ENT doctor who says, I'm worried about seizures, you would definitely want to get an EEG. Now, a lot of kids with autism have these daydreamy, foggy, staring spells. And such spells may or may not be seizures. They don't always indicate a necessity to get an EEG, since an EEG can be so difficult. I've had parents try 6 times, and each time there was motion artifact, and they never got any reliable data. And that's hard on a child and parents. So you want to do it when you really need to do it. And if you don't really need to do it, if you can figure out what's going on with those staring spells without going to all the trouble, there's some benefit of that. So if your child is daydreaming and staring off, which a lot of kids with autism do, or ADHD, or sometimes a child who just likes to daydream, if you're worried that it might be a seizure, what the neurologist recommend is that you touch your child's cheek. You actually touch their face. So don't just call them by name from a distance or tap them lightly on the shoulder. Touch their face and offer them their most favorite food, drink, activity, toy, whatever. If you can interrupt the staring, daydreaming spell, then it's not seizures. And that can bypass the need for an EEG when it's hard to do. So you definitely don't need an MRI and EEG on a regular basis. It's when you have clinical concern and you bring it to your doctor, and as a team you decide together, hey, there's the medical necessity for this because of the more severe symptoms. Does that help?
I think that really does. I think a lot of times, in my experience, parents will be making progress and things will be going along, and you get to a point where things stagnate. And
good point.
And I think a lot of times that's when the MRI and the EEG thing comes up. So I'm not surprised that for a lot of these people, they're not hearing it as the first thing on the plate. I think it is something that comes up in conversation much later for a lot of families. And I appreciate you saying to us that it's not something that you need to do again and again and again. I know families that much later in the process then went and got an EEG, and for some of them it ruled stuff out, and so it wasn't necessary, but you wouldn't necessarily have known that. And for others, they discovered another piece of the puzzle for that individual child, that child was having very small seizures, one in particular that was happening in the middle of the night. And it was really helpful to them in how they continued and got past that point where things were stagnating.
Great point. Yeah, there are, of course, times and places for both the MRI and the EEG. And you mentioned a really important one, that if there's a sudden change in the child's developmental trajectory, they were making progress with their behavioral treatment programs and so forth, and then it changes and they stall, that's of neurologic concern. That deserves further workup. Also, if the child is diagnosed to have certain genetic conditions that can be associated with autism spectrum, like tuberous sclerosis, that's known to have abnormalities on the MRI that are really important to document. So definitely there are time and place for both the MRI and the EEG. Also the first EEG may not pick up all seizure activities. So your standard routine EEG, in more severe cases where seizures are strongly suspected, you may need to do 24-hour video monitoring EEG and do it in more detail. So having a normal EEG in and of itself doesn't totally rule out seizures. So there's both ends of the spectrum.
Good to know. Kelby, do we have enough time for one last question, or are we out of time? Okay, he says we can do one more. Hi, Shannon and Dr. Copeland. Is it okay to try to give a trial of a supplement such as N-acetylcysteine without doing the blood test? What is the blood test called? And thank you for breaking it down so that we can all understand.
Okay, the blood test is called glutathione. Glutathione. But it's actually hard to get a good glutathione test from most U.S. labs. You want both forms of it, reduced and oxidized. European labs tend to have it more. I think Great Plains Lab is developing a good form of the glutathione test. But you don't absolutely have to get that. Glutathione is a major protective antioxidant system in our body. Now, the nice thing about N-acetylcysteine, it's an amino acid. It's an amino acid we all have already had in our food, because when we break down our proteins, one of the amino acids that goes to make that protein is N-acetylcysteine. But the nice thing about it is this cysteine amino acid gets converted into glutathione in our body. And it's really very safe and beneficial, so you don't have to get a blood test before starting it as a supplement. And I encourage it. It's a good support for our mitochondria, which are our energy engines of our cells and so forth. So I think it's well worth a trial.
Wonderful. We thank you so much for all of the information that you give us. I want to encourage everybody. I know that we had a bunch of people write in this morning and we had already picked the questions. We do like to pick the questions for Dr. Copeland ahead of time so that she has a chance to go over them and not just speak off the cuff, because this is some pretty important stuff. So if you did send in a question, I want you to know that we're not going to lose that. We were going to bank that, and we'll be answering those questions in April. And Dr. Copeland, we thank you so much for giving us your time and your expertise. It is so, as you know, it's not just rare. You're the only person that we are aware of that is both a board certified behavior analyst and a developmental pediatrician. You are a gift to us, and we so appreciate your particular expertise so that we are not all wandering in the woods wishing that we could get those two things together. Thank you for being who you are.
Well, thank you so much, and it's my great pleasure.
Well, we will look forward to talking to you in April when it's Autism Awareness Month. And for those of you who send in questions, don't give up. We will get to them. Thank you, Dr. Copeland.
All right. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Now, we're here at the end of the show, and I just want to take a second to talk about tomorrow's show. We have Dr. Doreen Granpichet. She's going to be with us, and she's going to be answering your questions. You can be sending those in tonight and tomorrow. A lot of those we take some beforehand, and we take some that are live in the middle of the show. So feel free to write those questions in. Then in the second hour tomorrow, we have Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. Nancy Allspaw Jackson will be joining me. We're going to give you an update on that run. More and more of you are doing the virtual run with Nancy and I, and we're so excited about that. But also tomorrow, we have the fabulous Vince Redmond is going to be joining us again. He comes once a month. He is a licensed marriage and family therapist, but not just your average licensed marriage and family therapist. He is somebody who did therapy with individuals and still does on the autism spectrum. He has more than 20 years experience with quality ABA. So he can see both sides of that for us. And he's going to be talking about what? Autism and anxiety. And I want to point out that we are going to be talking a little bit about autism and our kids who are on the autism spectrum having anxiety. But we're also going to be talking about the other part of the equation, the anxiety that the parents experience. Because I was in a conversation with Vince in a different meeting earlier this week, and we were talking about I was saying, quite honestly, that sometimes my anxiety, and heaven knows I suffer from it, it feeds my child's anxiety. And he was telling me that that's much more prevalent than I could ever imagine. So we're going to talk about that, about how we deal with our anxiety and how it influences our children. I saw my child doing something and then stopping and taking his pulse to see if it was okay the other day. And I was like, oh, I know where that came from. So if you're like me and worried about how your anxiety anxiety is affecting your child, we're going to talk about some practical things that we can do to help ourselves and to help us help our children with their anxiety and not add to it. Oh, I don't know about the rest of you, but that's really super duper important to me. Okay, so that's all going to be happening tomorrow. We hope that you're here with us. Give you a little programming note. As I mentioned at the start of the show, we're going to be moving in 2 weeks. We are doing shows on the 1st and 2nd of April, but there will be the week after that we're going to not do any live shows, but we're going to be posting on a regular basis some things that we're filming now and we'll be filming then. So it will be like that we didn't go away at all, but wait till you see where we're moving. It's all going to be very, very exciting. We thank you guys for being with us today, and make sure that you're here tomorrow for Ask Dr. Doreen and Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. We're taking on the anxiety. Until then, please give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now.